Good morning, my brothers and sisters in the Lord.
Good morning.
How are you all in this rainy Sunday morning? I hope you all get some rest last night. We are playing in the World Series. Go Stros. Oh, Pastor James, I hope you'll say go Rockets as well when we get to the final stretch of the NBA Finals. I know you're rooting for the Warriors, but let me remind you that the Lord has called you to the city of Houston. Of course, I'm just playing with you. First off, I would like to thank everyone for appreciating our pastor last Sunday. I'm not commissioned by the leadership of the church, but I'm speaking on my own to personally thank the Sunnyside Bible Study Group and the Soaring Eagles for their token of appreciation for the ministry that God has called me to do in this church. Church, let me tell you that the last 3 years of my Christian walk with the Lord has been exponentially great in this church. When the two pastors that we have here for quite a number of years have finally decided to step down as shepherd of this church, I was really saddened and depressed. And I'm thinking that it may hinder the work of Christ here in the city of Houston. But then I was reminded once again that Jesus is our rock, our mighty fortress, and the whole church is not dependent on who the Lord has called to preach in this pulpit. The church of Christ will remain and will stay strong because it is the bride of Jesus Christ himself. Thank you so much for your token of appreciation. And this nice barong that I'm wearing this morning is also a token of appreciation by Papang. Janice's father is a tailor, not related to James Taylor or any tailor for that matter, but he made me this nice barong and this nice pants as well. And one day I wish I could wear something fitting like Pastor James in this church, but it would make me, in Tagalog we call it nagmumurang kamyas. So let me just say midlife crisis, something like that. But I appreciate you, church, for everything that you've done and continue to do for the work of our Savior, our Master, our King, Jesus Christ. And I hope and I wish to work with you for many more years in this church. We are continuing on the series of the last days. And the question that is posed before us is, are we there yet? Have you seen that movie, Are We There Yet? There's like part 1 and part 2. Are we there yet? The kid keeps on asking, are we there yet? Okay. This question is asked at least 1,000 times whenever my family goes for a long drive. Like when we try to drive to Colorado or Chicago or wherever you are, my youngest son, well, as a matter of fact, even my oldest son, I'm not going to mention the name, but he's would always ask, are we there yet? So to solve this problem, I invited, or I would always tag along, Jeriah with us. And that solves the problem. Because Jeriah brings with him tons of stories, both cheesy and funny. He can talk for hours and hours, keeping us entertained, hence evading the question, are we there yet? But let me say, after about 30 minutes of talking here in this pulpit, you'll probably be asking, is he done yet? The question, are we there yet, has some sense of impatience. You know, like when people when my kids ask me, are we there yet? I can sense that impatience within them. But yet, sometimes I feel the same way when I think about the second coming of Jesus Christ. Fortunately for us as Christians, Christ himself in Matthew 24 gave us signs to be watching for prior to his return. And these signs will be the point of our meditation this morning. As followers of our Savior, what preparations do we need to have? Or what preparations do we need to do so that we can claim that we are indeed ready to meet him? Just some disclaimer this morning, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Eric Belarga. I am a full Christian. I try to live a full Christian life, full time. And on the side, I work as a nurse in an emergency room in a trauma center here in Houston. And a home health nurse as well. But I'm trying to live full time as a follower of Christ. And I'm telling you, church, it's not easy. I wish I can tell you this morning that I have a Bachelor of Science degree in eschatology. Are you all familiar with eschatology? No. I'm sorry to hear that, but I know some of you will probably be asking Siri and Google right now to what is eschatology. Eschatology came from the Greek word eskatos, which means the last things. So if you put eskatos and ology, which is the study of, it clearly states that it is a study of the last things. Okay? Now, if you want to kind of do an in-depth or more detailed study of the signs of the times or the signs of the second coming of Jesus Christ, I would highly recommend that you come early for church. Because our adult Bible study is discussing the book of Revelations. And right now, they are in lesson number 96. Can you imagine? Lesson number 96. And I think that's the reason why, the enemy is trying to hinder the teachings of the last times, because this is very important. So I would refer you to Tito Bob for his Sunday school class that goes every Sunday morning to do an in-depth study of the signs of the times. But before we dig into the Word of God, let's come to the Lord in prayer and ask the Holy Spirit to guide us as we study His Word this morning. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we pray that you would open our eyes, that you would let our heart listen to your Holy Spirit. I pray, Jesus, that we would see more of you in your word and less of our intentions. To you be glory, honor, and praise. Amen. Matthew 24. It's a long chapter, so I'm going to be jumping from one verse to another in order for me to cover most of the verses in Matthew 24. But I have here, in front of me is the book of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. I'll be reading from NIV, starting with verses 1 to 3. Verse 1 says, Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention. Do you see all these things? He asked. I tell you the truth, no one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. Verse number 3, as Jesus was sitting on Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately and said, tell us, they said, when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Well, two questions that have been constantly asked over the years, And it says there in one of the verses, the disciples actually came in private to ask Jesus Christ about when and how these things are going to happen. So what is being asked here? Now, to give you a background on Matthew 24, this is about probably 2 or 3 more days before they crucified Christ. And the previous chapters, it discusses about a parable about the wedding banquet. And then the chapter 23 says about Jesus pronounces woes upon the religious leaders. So a few more days before he gets crucified, they all came to this temple with all the disciples, and as soon as they left the temple, they were walking away when his disciples came to him, and it's like getting his attention. The disciples are saying, look, Jesus Christ, look at this temple. Isn't this temple magnificent, right? Because that temple was built by King Solomon, so you can just imagine all those jewels, the gold, the silver, the bronze, platinum, everything that they put in that temple. So it's a magnificent sight to behold. And so when Christ was asked that question, he immediately answered by saying that Jesus answered, "Watch out that no one deceives you," right? "For many will come in my name claiming I am Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear wars and rumors of wars." He started, throwing in answers like this. But in verse 2, he kind of like told the disciples that not one stone here will be left on another. And that has a significant impact on the life of those disciples. Because, it took years to build that temple. A lot of people have shed blood for that temple to be built. And here comes Christ. The disciples are kind of like telling him, "Look at this temple. It's magnificent. It's beautiful." Now you got to remember, these disciples came from provinces in Galilee, in the country of Israel, the countryside. And so, in Tagalog term, I know this may sound really bad, but we have people coming from the provinces, we call them promdi. Right? They come to Manila and they saw those skyscrapers and they're like, and we call them promdi, from the province. The same thing with the disciples. They saw this magnificent temple, and so they were telling Christ, this temple is so magnificent. And yet Christ's response was, "I tell you the truth, that not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down." I'm like, that's an antithesis, right? It's like, I'm telling you, this is such a beautiful temple, such a beautiful edifice, and yet you're telling me not one of them will be left on top of the other. So now, they were curious about what's going to happen, right? And so they approach Jesus Christ in private, asking, "Come on, give us the scoop on this one. Well, what's the deal with this one? Why are you telling us that? When will this happen? And what are the signs of your coming and the end of the age?" So 2 questions that even at the time of Jesus Christ is being asked. And these disciples are even asking them in private. Now, church, let me remind you that the signs of the times that Jesus have preached in chapter 24 of the Gospel of Matthew is not meant to gratify the curiosity of the people at that time, or even his disciples. It is not to satisfy their curiosity about the coming of the age, but to guide their consciences and their conversations and their way of life. Now, we move on to the signs of his coming. First sign, as we see in verses 6 to 10, it says there, the Great Tribulation. There will be great tribulation. There will be wars and rumors of wars. Now, we have a saying that if there's smoke, there's fire, right? So, rumors of war may not actually mean just rumors of war. It may actually mean actual war going on. Because have you heard anything like a quiet war? Right? There's no such thing as quiet war. All wars are violent, period. Right? You don't fight with the enemy and say, shh, quiet, right? Or not everybody using silencer. How would you make that cannon really quiet that no one would hear that there are wars going on in your place? But there's no such thing as quiet war. So rumors of war would definitely mean there are wars going on. I don't know about you, but I find it, maybe, yes, people argue in such a manner that you would even have a cue that they're actually fighting. My father is at Ilonggo, and the way they fight, I thought they're they're kind of like consoling each other, you know? Because the intonation of how they talk, you know how Ilonggos are. There's a lot of Ilonggos here. And there you go, Brother Bob. And you know, sometimes I'm clueless whether they're fighting or what, you know, because I remember one time I have a cousin from Cabatuan, Iloilo, who stayed with us for like a year or two, and then my father was like really upset with him because he always gets lost coming to our house, and he goes like, "Dugay na sa Manila, tunto pa rin." And I'm like, okay, well, I wonder what he's saying, but you know, the intonation of the voice sounds like, you know, he's saying something of praise to this kid, but no, actually he was upset. So the Great Tribulation will be a fight between the nations versus nations. There will be wars, according to what Jesus said in this verses 6 to 10. And as you know, war would lead to famine. And then famine would lead to pestilence. There will be news of earthquakes. Just recently in Mexico City, there's like a magnitude, 8.2 earthquake, right? There will be news of persecution, death, and apostasy when people would just turn away from their faith. I know even in the Christian faith, in the church of Protestantism, there are disagreements over the details of future events. You know, among believers, I'm telling you, some people believe in pre-tribulation, which means the second coming will be here before the actual tribulation, or post-trib. There are folks who would believe that the rapture will happen before this or after this. There's a lot of beliefs about this one. Personally, I believe that when God called us to meet with Jesus Christ in that incident we call rapture, this is just my personal thing. I didn't take this from the Bible, so, you know. I believe that the Chinese or the Japanese people will be raptured first prior to me. Because the Bible says, in the blink of an eye. They got cheeky eyes. Probably in 0.1 seconds, you know, they get raptured. But for me, it may take another half second. But that's just me, church. So what I'm trying to say here is we may disagree with the various teachings of the church. But tell you what, those disagreements, whether it will be soon, it will be later, or rapture first, or rapture later, those are of secondary importance. The more important thing really is to answer, are we ready when the time happens? Because we can debate on all those beliefs. It would take another year probably lesson number 205 for us to finish that, but those are secondary importance. The question is, are we ready when Christ comes the second time around? Another sign that Jesus foretold is found in verses 23 to 28, and it discusses about false prophets. As you can see in our days and time, there are cults. I even lost count of how many cults we have in the Philippines. And I believe there are more to come even here in the United States. Be careful of those charismatic movements that predicts Christ's second return. People will tell you that Christ will be come this November 15, 2020 or whatever, you know. But those are false prophets. Be careful with the preachers who would ask you to open up your purses as they preach, and they would lay their hands on your purses or your bags so that the blessings from heaven would just flow straight to your pockets. I even heard about preachers who would ask their followers to raise your passports, and the visa will be coming if you raise your passport. It will be stamped on it in the next couple of days. Prosperity gospel, for instance, is half truth. And anything that is half truth is a lie. Christian life is more than receiving blessings. It is also about denying oneself, picking up our crosses and following Jesus. Many believers have died for the gospel and did not live a comfortable life. You see, Jesus Christ himself reminded us about false prophets in verses 4. If you look into verse 4, he said, Jesus answered, "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name claiming I am Christ." And then verse 11, he goes by saying, "And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people." And there goes again in verse 24, where he mentioned, "For the false Christ and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible." 3 times in this passage that Jesus Christ reminded us to be careful, to watch out for false teachings. Because as we all know, brothers and sisters in the Lord, even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Here in First Philippine Baptist Church, if you hear any of these false teachings, you have to call out those teachings. If you come to our Sunday school classes and they're teaching not what the Word of God is saying, you have to stand up and let us know. If this pulpit is used to preach false teachings, you have every right to stand and oppose to those teachings. Number 3, preaching of the gospel to all nations. In verse 14, he said, "And this gospel," the salvation through the acceptance of Jesus Christ as our personal Lord and Savior, "and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." That's a condition there, right? The gospel has to be preached before it comes back. That simply goes to say that every one of us will be given the opportunity to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. And this was later confirmed in the book of Philippians when Apostle Paul said, "Every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord." And when that happens, it will be futile to exercise the speaking of tongues. Because every single one of us will profess and confess with our hearts that Jesus Christ is Lord. Number 4 sign. Now, these are not all the signs that we're anticipating to see. That's why I'm telling you, you have to go look into the book of Revelations and attend our adult Bible study class so that you would be, you would learn all those signs that we're anticipating to see. But this is just based on Matthew 24. The Antichrist and the rebellion in verses 15 to 22. Now in verse 15, it tells something about when you see standing in the holy place, the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the roof of his house go down to take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get his clothes. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath. The appearance of the Antichrist and the rebellion. The man of sin is coming. The beast that was described in Revelation 13. The Antichrist that was foretold in John 2:18. And so, dear children, in John 2:18, this is the last hour, as you have heard, that the Antichrist is coming. Even now, many Antichrists have come. This is how we know it is the last hour. They will come. They are coming. They are here. Fifth and the last sign. There will be signs in heaven. This is interesting because in verse 29, he mentioned the sun will be darkened. What do we call that? Eclipse. Exactly. And the moon will not give its light. Lunar eclipse. The stars will fall from the sky. Comets. And the heavenly bodies will be shaken. So there are signs in the heavens. We've been seeing comets all this time, right? Hale-Bopp comet, Lovejoy, McNaught comet. Any of you familiar with these comets? And even the movements of heavenly bodies are coming into fruition. When I was in elementary grade, there are only 8 planets. And I guess they start shaking all those planets, and now there's like, what, 9 planets already? So there are movements with the planets as well. Now, church, based on the passage of study this morning, let me ask you this question, but you don't have to raise your hand to answer. Could Christ come back any minute now? Based on those signs that we have discussed, from the Great Tribulation, false prophets, preaching of the gospel, the Antichrist and the rebellion, the signs in heaven, is there any possibility that Christ's comeback is inevitable? Now, if we say, yes, we are 100% certain that all the signs mentioned by Christ himself have already been fulfilled, it looks like the passage in Matthew 24 seems to point to a much larger events. It doesn't look like we have seen it all, right? But then the thing is, if we say, no, I don't think that any minute now Christ could return, that nullifies the force of the warning of Jesus when he says, watch, be ready, that he is returning at the hour we do not expect. So that point of discussion there kind of like made me confused. How do I answer this question when a non-believer or even believers ask me, what do I think about the coming of Christ? Is it any minute now? Let me present to you a resolution. It is to say that it is unlikely, but possible that the signs have already been fulfilled. And therefore, we simply cannot know with certainty, with 100% certainty, at any point in history, whether the signs have been fulfilled or not. Now, let's go back to the signs and see if that is true. The Great Tribulation. Do you remember in your world history, those of you who are big fan of world history, the Roman siege of Jerusalem in the Jewish War of AD 66 to 70, where like 85% of the Jews perished in that war. Now, at that point in time, those people living in that era may have thought that this is probably the Great Tribulation. Thousands of years later, here we are, still awaiting the return of Jesus Christ. There's a famine predicted in Acts 11:28. Acts 11:28 says, one of them, named Agabus, stood up and through the Spirit predicted that a severe famine would spread over the entire Roman world. This happened during the reign of Claudius. Wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines. These things, we have witnessed them. Maybe not in our lifetime, but if we go back to history books, there have been earthquakes stronger than 8.2 in the Richter scale. Right? Suffering that is far greater than anything. That's what Jesus said in that passage. But how are we to gauge or know which one is the worst in all history? Or is it yet to come? The Great Tribulation could be what is happening now in the lives of our brothers and sisters living in the Middle East, where persecutions of Christians is a normal thing. People, Christians, followers of Christ, have died in Soviet Union, China, and other Muslim countries. Let's go back to the second sign, which is false prophets. You know, even in the Old Testament, there are Egyptian magicians. You remember that time when Moses went there? And there are magicians, wizards in the courts of Pharaoh. So those are false prophets. And then in the New Testament, in Acts 8:10, there are also a record of these false prophets. In Acts 8:10, it reads, "And all the people, both high and low, gave him their attention and explained," referring to Simon, the sorcerer, "This man is the divine power, known as the great power," capital G, capital P. Those are false prophets, because we know he is not the great power. But here's the thing, church. How are we able to differentiate the false teachings from the true ones? There's only one way to know. We have to know the truth. Because if we know the truth, then it's automatic that we will know the false teachings. In Deuteronomy 13:1-3, the Bible has given us specific instructions on false teachings. Deuteronomy chapter 13, verses 1-3. I'll be reading all the way to verse 4. "If a prophet or one who foretells by dreams appear among you and announces to you a miraculous sign of wonder, and if the sign or wonder of which he has spoken takes place, and he says, 'Let us follow other gods,' small g, gods you have not known, and let us worship them, you must not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer. The Lord your God," capital G, "is testing you to find out whether you love him with all your heart and with all your soul. It is the Lord your God you must follow, and in him you must serve. You must revere. Keep these commands and obey him, serve him, and hold fast to him." False prophets, false teachings. Unlikely, but possible that we have seen all those false prophets. Third sign, preaching of the gospel to all nations. Do you really believe with all your heart that the gospel of Jesus Christ has been preached all throughout the world? Unlikely, right? Because guess what? According to the Ethnologue Catalog of World Languages, there is about 6,909 living languages that may need translation of the Bible. But then in Colossians 1:5-6, we read, "And you are looking forward to the joys of heaven and have been ever since the gospel first was preached to you. The same good news that came to you is going out all over the world and changing lives everywhere, just as it changed yours that very first day you heard it and understood about God's great kindness to sinners." Yep, it's being preached all over the world. But it did not specifically say that it has reached every single soul in the planet. Unlikely, but there's a possibility that this has happened. Even in Colossians 1:23, it says, "If indeed you continue in faith, stable and steadfast, not shifting from the hope of the gospel that you heard, which has been proclaimed in all creation under heaven, of which I, Paul, became a minister." It says there, he has been proclaimed in all creation. But 2017, compared to, this is what, AD 33 to AD 70, I'm guessing. The population there is very much different from the population that we have now. Unlikely, but there is a possibility. The Montano Mission Group that came here a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you had the chance to talk to those, our fellow kababayans from the Philippines who joined the Montano Mission Group, headed by Pastor Bruce. all four of them are indigenous people from the Ilocos tribe. And one of those pastors mentioned that there are at least 30 other tribes from the Ilocos section alone. And each one of them has their own dialect. They're on the third dialect, the third biggest tribe that they're trying to translate the New Testament. So is there any possibility that the world has been preached to all nations with the onset of internet, right? I mean, if Pepsi is able to reach it all the way to the Banawe Rice Terraces, why not the gospel of Jesus Christ? Could be unlikely, but there's a possibility. The Antichrist and the rebellion. You know, during the time of Roman Emperor Nero, who persecuted Christians and claimed to be God and demanded to be worshipped, they thought that the Emperor Nero is the one, the abomination that causes desolation. They thought he was the Antichrist. Actually, they believed that the end is near because Emperor Nero demanded that he be worshipped. And that's actually taking the place of God, right? World War II. People believe that Adolf Hitler could be the Antichrist. If it's not him, it must be Joseph Stalin, right? And just recently, some sects believe that the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church could be the Antichrist as well. But up to this time, there's no way, really, to pinpoint the Antichrist that is being described in the book of Revelations. Unlikely, but there's a possibility. Now, the last sign, the signs in the heaven. Now, this is a different category now. This event is something far greater than what we have seen. It's not just those regular total eclipse or earthquakes and what have you.